All right. Who put the acid in my drink again?
Hey, what's up, world? Sorry it's been a little while. I've been a little preoccupied with some things. And that's because I started school, I believe the first day of classes was like January 28th for me, or something like that, 27th, something along those lines. And aside from school, I've been a little bit busier with work, so I just really haven't had the time or energy to make a video. And it's not that I don't want to make videos. I'd love to make a video every single day. But a person only has so much time and energy in a single day.
Yeah, what the hell wrong with you, man? Nobody give a damn about no Phantom of the Opera.
And essentially, long story short, in this video, I want to just catch up with a couple of things. Some comments that were left in some of my videos, and some major events that recently took place. So I'm going to start off with this V for Vendetta exposed video. In particular, this comment that was left on my BitChute channel, or at least my BitChute version of this video. In the original comic book, V is depicted as Satan with horns when he takes his hat off. He also quotes Sympathy for the Devil by Rolling Stones when he introduces himself saying, "Pleased to meet you, hope you guess my name." Alan Moore, who wrote the comic, was a massive Aleister Crowley fan and repeatedly quotes Crowley in the comic. Alan also claims to create his stories through automatic writing and entities that have possessed him. Very creepy stuff. So, essentially, this person left this comment because in this video, in this V for Vendetta exposed video that I did not too long ago, I kind of theorized that certain parts in this movie that talk about the devil, like when he's about to kill the priest.
Thus I clothe my naked villainy with old odd ends, stolen forth from holy writ, and seem a saint when most I play the devil.
There's also a quote about the devil tricking people or conquering the world through truth. That's what it is. It's like a quote about the devil conquering the world through truth that's on a mirror. And of course, in that mirror, you actually see a reflection of V. And essentially in this video, I had theorized that when you know the truth about V for Vendetta, these quotes and these portions of this movie can actually apply to V for Vendetta. And, that was just kind of, part of my whole theory. So this person left this comment, which was a great comment, and I ended up checking it out, and I ended up finding a clip on, I believe it was Google Images. And this is, I guess, the scene he's talking about. And he's all like, this is V. And he's like, he sees some guy and he's like, "Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste." And he takes off his hat and he has horns. Now, if you look at Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones, that's like the first couple of lines. It says, "Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste." And by the way, if you guys hear like honking or like traffic, that's because I'm in my car right now. I'm like kind of in between jobs, and that's kind of how busy I've been. I have to do this video in between jobs. It's kind of screwed up. So that's exactly what V says here, and it kind of like corroborates or kind of like proves that my theory about this movie, or at least about those parts of this movie, are probably spot on. Now, another thing that I want to say about this comment, though, before I move on to the next thing that I want to cover here, is that I find this very interesting, that this guy, Alan, the writer for V for Vendetta, claims to create his stories through automatic writing and entities that have possessed him. I find this interesting because I recently came across another channel that claims that like a lot of these things that we see are written by like angels and demons and like different like I guess dimensional beings or whatever you want to claim that they are. So I found that to be pretty interesting. I didn't make the connection until right now when I was making the video here. But anyway, let's move on to the next thing, and that is my Fight Club video. So in my Fight Club video, I had pointed out the different dates, actually specifically the 3 different dates that Fight Club came out. And I was essentially trying to make connections between these dates and 9/11 because of my whole theory about this movie that I discuss in this video. Now, interestingly enough, somebody actually pointed out in the comments, and this is actually something I should have pointed out in the video because it's something I was familiar with, it just didn't come to mind when I was making the video. And that is that November 11th, November, is actually the 9th month of the year. And Nove, or Nueve, or whatever, is like 9 in like Spanish and like these other Latinized languages, these other languages that derive from Latin. And I forget exactly what 9 is in Latin, but it has to do with November. So November is actually the 9th month. So it's actually like spot on. It actually is a 9/11 release if you look at it on the original calendar before they added the 2 extra months, or before they decided to. It's not that they added 2 extra months, but it's that they decided to divide the calendar up into 2 extra months. Now, the other thing that I wanted to point out was this scene. There's this scene in Fight Club, and I should have included this scene in the Truth About Fight Club video. And not only this scene, but I should have also included the fact that I believe there's 2 other plane scenes. But whatever, there's multiple plane scenes in Fight Club. And, they talk about the safety pamphlets, and they talk about basically the plane going down, and there's even that scene where he has a nightmare that the plane is falling apart, or that an explosive goes off on the plane and it falls apart. And there's a lot of plane scenes in Fight Club. There's a lot of allusions to planes. And there's even this scene. Yeah, it's just like a really wacky scene. I mean, I guess the scene where the plane is falling apart, it blows up or whatever, would have been just as good of a scene to have shared. But it's interesting, there are all of these plane scenes that I failed to point out in my initial analysis of Fight Club that I thought, were worth pointing out, in hindsight. So, just interesting stuff if you are going to analyze this movie. That's maybe something else that you should pay attention to. But anyway, now the other thing that I want to cover is, and actually I think this is actually going to be the last thing I'm going to cover, but I'm going to go into great detail into this one, is the video that I put out titled Major Event Warning, Serpent Eats Comet, Light of Bethlehem. And essentially in this video, I talk about this comet that recently passed by, this green comet, and apparently it hasn't passed by for 50,000 years or something like that, since the Neanderthals were around. And it was passing through the serpent constellation, and it had a lot of very interesting symbolism. I'm not going to go into it. Watch this video if you're not familiar with it. But anyway, in this video, I made a prediction that there would be a major event anywhere between, I forgot exactly what date in January. It was mid to late January, and mid to mid-February. It was mid to late February. And that was the prediction that I made. Now, I thought it was going to be the prediction I made that it would be a satanic event, or that maybe it would be possibly a man-made event. I thought it might have something to do with the war in Ukraine. I thought, hey, maybe, who knows, it might go nuclear if those weapons do in fact exist. So, I don't think I said that explicitly in this video, but I had made this prediction, and I believe it came true in the events that happened in Turkey and Syria. I believe over 54 or 55,000 people were killed in these earthquakes, or in this earthquake. Actually, it was multiple earthquakes, because I think it was like a 7.9 or like 8.1 that was then followed by like a 7.6 or 7.8 or something like that. And, these were devastating earthquakes, and I want to talk a little bit about the timing of this earthquake and the possible causes of this earthquake. Now, the earthquake happened at 1:17 UTC. Now, when we look that up to Eastern Standard Time, that's 8:17 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that would have been 8:17 p.m. the day before. So the earthquake happened on February 6th, so on 2/6/2023, and it happened at basically 1:17 in the morning in Syria and Turkey. And that time was 8:17 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And essentially what's interesting is that just an hour before that time, the Grammys kicked off at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This was the day before, though, February 5th, because of the time difference. So what's really interesting about this is that this was a very satanic Grammys. And I would love to know the exact time of this guy's performance. I forget his name. It's like Sam something, whatever. It doesn't matter what his name is. But it was a very satanic performance. And maybe there's no connection. Maybe it's just a complete coincidence that I would make this like satanic prediction, and the satanic Grammys would kick off an hour before this event, which was just absolutely devastating. But anyway, some people believe that HAARP was responsible for this. And of course, this has been debunked by the media. I'm not saying that I believe this, because I'm going to provide a different explanation. But yeah, some people, they have different theories that it was a deliberate earthquake, and like they were like, yeah, they did it because Turkey rejected like Ukraine from the European Union or whatever. I don't really know the full details about that. I haven't really looked into it. But in this video, I want to discuss the Thunderbolts project and like this electric universe theory perspective on this event. So I'm going to play a couple of clips from the Thunderbolts projects that talks about the electrical nature, or maybe not the electrical nature, but the electrical attributes of comets.
The electrical influence of a comet extends to the boundary of its coma, and the coma of some comets, like the recent one of Hartley, was bigger than the sun.
Alrighty, so clearly comets, he's talking about comets like in the electric universe. He's talking about the electrical influence. That's actually what he refers to it as. And let's see what he says this electrical influence causes.
And so you can understand then that intrusion of a charged body near a charged sun can give rise to a sudden discharge from the sun.
Okay, so in the electric universe theory, all of these bodies that exist out in the solar system, all of these planets, these moons, these asteroids, these comets, all of this other stuff, actually all throughout the universe, because there's other stuff in space. It's not like it's just empty space. They claim that there's like electrical connections between them. They claim that they're like electrical bodies that have like charges to them. And it's an interesting theory. I'm not going to get into it. I'm not an expert on it. But essentially, he claims that this electrical influence of the comet causes basically coronal mass ejections on the sun. And they show this video, and it's like a video of like a comet producing a CME, a coronal mass ejection. And, he talks about basically what's really happening here is that there is an exchange of energy going on between these objects that causes the one of the electrical bodies to have to like discharge energy, to have to like release any extra energy. And this is basically like lightning. Like lightning, if we look up the definition of lightning. Lightning is a naturally occurring electrostatic discharge during which two electrically charged regions both in the atmosphere or with one on the ground, temporarily neutralize themselves, causing the instantaneous release of an average of 1 gigajoule of energy. And they're basically, they're neutralizing themselves. They're returning back to what they're supposed to be, to whatever their homeostasis or whatever their neutral factor would be. And that's basically what this guy goes on to say. He goes on to say that that earthquakes are basically like underground lightning.
Can cause internal discharges. I mean, the same thing happens on Earth. Earthquakes are underground lightning.
And it sounds absurd, but if you understand what lightning is, like when you understand what earthquakes are, and when you understand that earthquakes do in fact take place in places of the Earth that don't have fault lines, you'll realize that, okay, well, if it's underground lightning, if there's this discharge of energy, of course it's going to affect places with fault lines the most. But it's also going to happen in places that there aren't fault lines. And earthquakes do in fact happen in places where there aren't fault lines. Now, so basically, my theory is that maybe it wasn't HAARP necessarily that caused this earthquake in Turkey. Maybe instead it was the comet that was passing by that affected the Earth electrically and caused this to happen. And maybe, this group, this club, the Satanists, maybe they just have knowledge of this. Maybe they have knowledge of how these things really work. Maybe they have this like sort of electrical universe understanding, but not only understanding, but maybe even instruments, and maybe they could tell, they can measure some way the stored energy in the planet, and whether it was like, where it was like the least neutral, or maybe they could even affect where it would be the least neutral. Maybe it's a little bit of both. Maybe it's a little bit of a natural source and an artificial influence of that natural source. But I don't know. I thought it was an interesting thing to put out there on this subject, because it's something I haven't really seen a lot of people do. Actually, I haven't seen a lot of people make the connection between the Satanic Grammys and this event, and like the peculiar timing or the coincidental timing between the two. I haven't seen anybody else point that out, and I definitely haven't seen anybody else make this electrical universe connection. Maybe, who knows, maybe the Thunderbolts Project people will put out a video kind of making this connection, because it's right up their alley. I mean, this comet was just passing us. I think it's like just 5 days away from when it was the closest to us. But this guy goes into, like this guy over at the Thunderbolts Project, he goes into like these objects, like a comet, having like a track of electricity that's basically also following in their wake. So, I don't know. I don't know the full science behind it. I just find it pretty interesting. I think it's something that's worth looking at. Can it really help us at all? Absolutely not. But I think that what it does is it shows how predictable these people are. I made this prediction in this video, Major Event Morning. I knew a major event was going to happen at this time. And honestly, I wasn't even accounting for this electrical influence of the comet. I should have, because I was already like somewhat loosely familiar with this, but it just didn't come to mind. So I should have included this into my analysis of it, but I didn't. But it shows how predictable they are. Because if it is man-made, if the club was responsible for it in some way, shape, or form, then it really shows how predictable these people are. And maybe you can do something with that. You can do something with understanding the predictability of these people, and not only the predictability of these people, but the symbols of these people, the arrogance of this club, of this group, how they kind of do it right in front of us, right in our face. They're having this satanic performance even, like probably right as tens of thousands of people are dying. And that really says It's not actually only the predictability. Actually, I think more importantly, it shows what kinds of people they are. I mean, this is really sick. I mean, this is like worse than even being a Nazi kind of sick. I mean, this is like worse than being any of the isms, you know, the racism, you know, sexism, or the ist, or sexist, racist. It's worse than any of that. Like, and it's right out in the open, and there's zero ramifications. People talk about it, but there's no consequences. There's no real pushback. And I don't mean like, you know, physical, like I'm not talking about any like terrible consequences. You know, violence is never the answer. But there's no pushback. You know, nobody calls them out. I mean, this is really sick. I mean, these people are really sick doing this. I mean, just think about that. Doing this while tens of thousands of people are dying. Some pretty sick people.
Our Great War is a spiritual war. Our Great Depression is our lives.